It's funny that you put it that way, because that was essentially how I approached the zine that I published 34 years ago, was through the exact same mechanism, where I was like, oh, this person is like mouthy and has a lot and can like write a sentence. Like, let's have them contribute. And then they would be like, I don't know anything about punk. And you're like, yeah, it's not all that complicated. It's just, And so I love it that like this is still your like reigning modality of like how you're approaching editorial.
I mean, do you realize that you've written a old 90s style punk zine as a
or was that the intent?
Well, as I was putting this together, it occurred to me, like, if I'm being truly honest, my literary influences are like Cream Magazine, Reader's Digest, Comet Bus, and like, honestly, Andy Rooney. When I was 14 years old, I read this collection of like essays by Andy Rooney, in which he's, just being Andy Rooney. He's being a grouch.
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we welcome first-time guest, repeat-time author, Jay.
And long-time listener.
I'm sorry, long-time fan. I guess that's the important thing for all of you to know. Jay Hunter Bennett, author of the brand new More Punk Than the Public Library, and author of the less than brand new Prodigal Rogerson and That Fugazi Basketball Hoop Photo
Zine.
Upside Down Punks.
Yes,
right, it does have a title.
Amazing true story of that Fugazi basketball hoop show.
And, this is why we have professionals on this program, because we normally can't always keep up. But Hunter comes to us today to help with an age-old problem, which we hear this from, I guess, the deep anxieties of every author. And that is the exact same thing that Faith Harper has always brought up to me when I'm like, how come you needed to write books? And her answer was, well, nobody was writing the books that I wanted to be published, the books that I wanted to read. So Hunter, why do you, or maybe I should say, how do you come to this approach?
How do you write the books that you want to read?
Well, that's the easy part.
I came to this approach inadvertently. I was obsessed from the time I was 13 years old with 12 actually, with Roger Rogerson, the first Circle Jerks bass player. And, he just disappeared, which to my mind would be kind of like if like Paul McCartney disappeared from the Beatles and nobody ever said where he was. So nobody ever said who he was, where he was, to my satisfaction. And you would think when the internet came along and literally like you can find anybody and find out what happened, that remained not true of Roger. So one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a 5-page article about where Roger Rogerson went. And the first person I talked to was Lucky Lair from the Circle Jerks, and he had no idea where Roger had been for like 12 years from the time he quit the band to the time that he came back. Actually, I guess it was 13 years. So I was like, I am going to write this story because nobody else has written it. And if I'm interested in it, then there's at least one other person out in the world that's going to be interested in this story. So all that's a long way of saying I wrote a book that I wish somebody else had already written.
And so then how does that translate to your new book, More Punk Than the Public Library?
That is more like I created the zine that I wish that somebody else had created. I was sitting around during the pandemic. I was bored. I was starved for human contact. And so I started a little library that gave away books about punk rock and crime. And because I'm kind of extra, as my daughter would say, I created I was like, there needs to be something that accompanies this library that explains it to people. So I started issue 1 was a FAQ, or frequently asked questions, explaining to people how to use a little library, which is probably overkill. Like, I think most people get it, but then like issue 2, because it was still the pandemic and I was still bored and lonely, I was like, you know what, we should have real content here. So I recruited my sister to write a essay about a book that she loved. And I was like, you know, this is a punk rock town, and even more specifically, Chevy Chase, DC, where I live, is a punk rock neighborhood. So I should interview DC punk rockers. So I called my favorite DC punk guitarist, or I emailed him actually, Michael Hampton, who was in Embrace, The Faith, SOA, and one of my faves, The Snakes, actually maybe my all-time favorite DC punk band.
Our industry is run by billionaires and conglomerates.
At Microcosm, we wanted the freedom to independently sell our books, easily pay royalties, manage our inventory, and understand our business all in one place.
That's why we've been using our own software since 2001.
Now, we want to share it with you.
Working Lit is the only business success software that is created and owned 100% by publishers for publishers.
Join Working Lit and get the agency you need to help your business grow.
Visit workinglit.com to try it for free.
So your dog also plays a key role in your book. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so our dog Hugo, who sadly died in January of 2025, he was definitely he was key personnel, as they would say in the government contracting world. Hugo was there from the very beginning. He was lying on my feet as I typed up issue 1. He also, you are dog owners. You know that your dog wakes up with the earliest person or wakes up with whoever gets up first in the house. So that's what Hugo would do with me as I was putting the newsletters together. He would lie on my feet, and then we would walk around the neighborhood. He would come down with me to check the box and see what exciting new deliveries we got. And then I think like issue 8 or 9, I was like, you know what? I love my dog. I suspect, well, I know 4 other people that also love my dog, but there may even be people out in the wider world that also love to look at pictures of my dog. So he became the face of the newsletter. I just always found an excuse to put his picture in the newsletters. And now, now going back, now that he's no longer here, I'm so glad that I did. It makes me really happy to look at those old photos. And also, in putting together the book, it gave me an excuse to put in even more photos of Hugo. I think he's now actually sharing the back cover with Dave Dichter from MDC, which is
You're welcome.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you for that. And it's appropriate because Hugo is a huge Dave Dichter fan, and though I've never met him, I'm reasonably certain that Dave Dichter is a huge fan of Hugo.
I have met Dave Dichter many times. He lives here in town. I actually, when you were working on the Prodigal Rogerson, I actually asked Dave Dichter, I was like, hey, can you know stuff, everyone, everything. And he was like, Joe, I can't remember 1983. Like, do you know all the things I've been through since then? And I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough. And then he was like, is that the guy that was in Bad Religion? And I'm like, no, not that guy. And it was kind of like that, where I'm like, and then I kind of settled in where I was like, this is how Roger Rogerson was forgotten. This is because it's like who his peers were.
Even the guys in the band didn't know where he was, which is, I think, a function of, normally if you start a band with people from your town. But if you're in Los Angeles and Roger moved there to become a rock star, they didn't know his parents. They didn't know where he grew up. They didn't know anybody from back in Kansas where he was from. So you can see how someone can slip through the cracks. And Joe, I think when we were having lunch at my favorite restaurant, the Thai Pad in Van Ness.
Shout out.
Mm-hmm. Plugs. Okay. We are accepting sponsorship dollars, Thai Pad.
But that
please.
is not a sponsor.
No, it should be.
Oh,
Please
no.
send the check.
I think I told you that my friend Sal ran into Des Cadena backstage at a Descendants gig in Philadelphia, and he was explaining to Des Cadena this book and how it was all about like finding Roger Rogerson and where he went. And Des Cadena said to him, I don't understand why that book exists. I know where he was. And I was like, all right, yeah. And if Des had written it down, I would not have needed to write the book.
I made a film. It was like a feature film, like a 4-year project. And then it was like literally the first comment on the first news story was like, everybody already knows this stuff. Maybe they'll have forgotten by the time this comes out.
Oh.
Yeah. You told me there was a guy in your warehouse that when you told him about the book goes, like, yeah, that's already in the movie, like the Circle Jerks documentary, which like it's not. Like I mean, there's like literally 30 seconds devoted to it, but memory is fascinating. And the guy that you worked with remembered that all of that was in the movie.
She saw them play when he was in the band, and so I think like she was like maybe amalgamating memories was kind of like my assessment of it.
Well, speaking of faulty memories, and other perils of surviving your punk rock youth and growing to be middle-aged, one thing that really surprised me about your book is how much the young people at our company love it. Like this was a lot of people's favorite book of the season. Total dark horse candidate. We thought this was like nicher than niche, but like
which is good. Niche is king.
But the young cool people were like, this book is the best. And I mean, partly because it's hilarious. Like Hunter, your writing voice is so funny and conversational, and it moves you along. And there's like a ton of different like kind of things in the book too. It's like really engaging. It's got like newsletter excerpts and photos and your dog, and you're like writing about it. But the other thing that surprised me about that was the young people thought this book was cool, and the way they wanted to market it was like, this is for middle-aged punks. And we were kind of like, is it cool to be a middle-aged punk?
Kind of.
So that's my question for you, Hunter. Is it cool to be a middle-aged punk? Do you feel cool?
How'd that work out?
I mean, honestly, I totally think so. Like, I still think all the stuff that I was into when I was 12 and thought was cool, I still think is cool when I'm 55 years old. And I think I'm cool because I'm into it. My wife and daughter will frequently say, well, my wife, I think, is a harsher judge than I am because we're the same, or than my daughter because we're the same age. I mean, I think my daughter and my sons, to some extent, think that I'm a little cool because I'm just not like most people's dads that they know. But yeah, I still think punk rock is super cool. And, you know, I think, as I mentioned in the book, though, I think one of the secret weapons of this book and of the zine was that most people that wrote for it, like, don't know anything about punk rock. And so I was just like, hey, can you write something? And so they just wrote it however they thought they should write it, not sort of based on like, well, this is the way someone would write it. Like, this is the way like Tim Tanuka from Ripper would have written it, or like, you know, Al Quint from Suburban Voice, like, you know. And I think that really made it work. And the other thing is, and I you know, I hope this is why it resonated with the young people that you work with, is there's literally something in there for everybody. I mean, we've got an article on like gaming and the Duke basketball team, and there's just, I like to think there's something for everybody.
I think there absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about it when I was doing the proofing, that I was like, Aaron would probably really like this. This is like the kind of eccentric that he's into. And
eccentric,
so it's I mean, it is what it is, Elly. Come on. We built this software from scratch to solve our own problems starting in 2001.
It's not only the reason for our survival, but the reason we've been a Publishers Weekly fastest growing publisher 3 years in a row.
Now we want to share it with you.
Join Working Lit and get back the agency to understand your publishing business, market and sell your books, and painlessly pay royalties.
Working Lit. Doing the math for publishers.
Visit workinglit.com to give it a try for free.
For those of you who live in the Washington, D.C. area, I'm going to be doing a conversation about More Punk Than the Public Library with Kim Coletta from Jawbox and DeSoto Records. That is on Saturday, May 16th at 5 p.m. Arrive a few minutes early to get a good seat. And readings at Politics and Prose are always spirited and entertaining.
Awesome.
The last one I was at, a guy kind of wandered in with about 15 minutes to go and seemed a little scary, and then sat down and pulled out a giant jug of bourbon and started drinking from it. And the bookstore person that was running it, who seemed very mild-mannered and bookish, was like, "No, you got to go. You got to get out of here." And the guy got chucked out.
Wow. I've never attended an event there, but I've watched videos of events there, which is also an option that's available. I'm not to promise that your event will be videoed and broadcast, but I have seen a number that have been, and it is always fascinating because it does seem like less of a controlled environment than you would think after having spent many hours in that bookstore, which is a very controlled environment. It's like almost like a library. But then at the events, like, people are spirited. There's like debate. There's kind of a, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say like faux intellectualism, but like there's
actual intellectualism.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go that far either. There's a certain amount of like, I've thought a lot about this question, and I'm asking you this like stumper. It's like at a film festival when you're like, you don't want to say what are your influences, so you just kind of like talk for a paragraph and then like leave the person to respond to something that isn't really respondable.
I saw Shellac one time. I think probably the last time they came through DC, they were at the Black Hat, and there was some sort of technical difficulty, and so Steve Albini started. He opened the floor to questions from the audience, and somebody asked some really detailed question, and Steve Albini said, "There are two kinds of questions. One where somebody actually wants to know the answer, the other where the questioner just wants everybody in the audience to know how smart they are and how much they know."
So you can look forward to that at the Politics and Prose event with J. Hunter Bennett and Kim.
Yep.
On May 16th, where we will have books available due to our planning ahead.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.
We've worn her down over time to our way of humor, and I think it was only shocking the first few times when we went a little off script, and then now she kind of knows this is how we roll.
Well, we are recording.
That's why, it's why I'm putting this important content out there.
Oh, okay.
Some valuable stuff right here.
So I was an upbeat grouch, but still kind of a grouch.